Hello, hello, hello. My name is Robert. I am the recovery guy, and you have entered into The Fix.
I'm Michelle. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Michelle.
I feel tall, so that's okay. I'm excited to be here, so thanks for having us. I'll try to not over-talk too much. I don't know about you, but when I was first introduced to a 12-step program in my early 20s, and I'm in my 40s, and I don't have decades of sobriety. So there were often times where I heard the big book read, this book, that I thought was weird. I heard the words God. It talks about life without drinking. I could not fathom that. I could not understand that. The things that I heard in my mind, and especially the state of mind when I was in, like I was 22 years old. And the truth is I didn't want to quit drinking and I didn't want to quit using. I didn't want to lose my son and I didn't want to go to federal prison, And AA was free and my ego was that big that I'm like, I won't know anyone there and I can go and it's free and I can take my kid. That's how I was first introduced to a 12-step program. I heard things that they read out of the book, like jails, institutions, and death. And at 22, I'm like, damn, that's dramatic, And I remember, being in my 30s, after treatment, after jails, after institutions, like all the things that I thought were so dramatic in that book, I had tested that theory time and time again, right? So exactly what he read. The most insane thing a girl like me can do is pick up a drink or put a drug in her body and think that everything is going to work out. There's no rational thought in that. And yet every bit of that choice makes sense to me in the moment, right? And so what I love and what I find relief in is that it does say there is hope for that. It does say there is redemption and change. It talked about a psychic change. I had to have another female, right, take me through what this book meant. Because I hear things like God and inventory and rules, and I'm like, no thank you, you know what I mean? But when a woman looked at me and said, do you want to look in the mirror and like what you see? Do you want to be not bound by so much shame that you don't hate every inch of who you are inside and out? Do you want to take off the mask that you've been taught to wear as a little girl and chosen to wear as a big girl, right? And break down those barriers and be able to sit in groups full of women and look them in the eyes and speak from truth and honesty and that there's hope for your life. That intrigued me, right? I needed someone else to change the verbiage of that book for my mind because I'm an alcoholic. He talked about seeking an elusive feeling. And I'm an alcoholic because I seek an elusive feeling outside of myself to not be me. I've been running from who and what Michelle is from the time she's been 3 years old. And I can do it, I can make it look really, really ugly, or I can make it look really, really pretty, right? I can use any form of self-harming, drugs, alcohol are on the list, men, money, exercise, undereating, overeating, cutting, like binging, shopping, working, like you name it, right? I love money, I love men, I love people, I love things. The book says people, places, and things. I used to hear it, right? I would come in the rooms and they're like, you have to change everything about your life, meaning people, places, and things. I'm like, no, thank you. I didn't understand why that was so hard for me. And that's because I wasn't open to the idea of a spiritual experience. Religion was used against me as a little girl. And I saw God and heard God and saw these people that were happy and chanted, held hands. And I'm like, this is exactly what I come from and I want no part of that, right? Again, I had to have another female look me in the eyes and sit down and explain to me what a true spiritual experience is, that freedom of bondage of self. The book tells us that we're selfish and self-centered to our core. I used to hear that and I'm like, F you don't know me, It says we're incapable of being honest with ourselves. You don't know me either. When really, right? Once I had a little bit of action and a little bit of help to break down some of those steps, they talked about an inventory and I was so full of shame. There were secrets that I promised myself I was taking to my grave, specifically mistakes I had made as a mom. I hated myself for those things. And there was no way I was going to tell one person, let alone anybody else. And if there's a God, he certainly isn't going to forgive me, right? I had to have a woman who I respected and I wanted what she had. And she had a similar journey, right? She said things that clicked to me. And I wanted what her heart had. I wanted that freedom. And the rules, right? I had to look at her and just like by baby step. And sometimes it was her like twisting my arm to follow the rules. But like, right? I found a strong enough woman. God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. I was broken enough to sit in the rooms and to be open to some different ideas, right? And she had a better life, and she had come from things that were similar to me, right? So if she can do it, maybe there's something in that, right? And that's all I had to trust. I wasn't open to praying. She used to tell me, Michelle, I want you to wake up every single day, and I want you to get on your knees, and I want you to be honest with yourself. And I was like, no, you want me to pray? She goes, no, I want you to get down on your knees, and I want you to say out loud honest things to yourself. She says, if you can never be honest with yourself, you can never be honest with God. And if you can't be honest with God, you'll never be honest with me, which means I can't help you when we're wasting our time. And I was like, okay. I figured out really fast when I speak out loud and I actually hear myself process, my lies don't sound the same when I keep them quiet in my head, right? And so my first prayers were not like, Lord, I love you and like help me. It was like, F you. Like, where have you been? You know what I mean? And the second, right, I'm all of a sudden all by myself, broken enough to be on my knees, and I'm saying things like, fuck you, out loud. That's a humbling experience. Because I'm like, something greater than me has kept me here all this time. I've tried to take myself out time and time again, right? And I started there. She used to tell me, Michelle, you have to be willing. And I'm like, well, I'm not, so can I go? I kept thinking she would kick me out. And this was the one place that every single time, right, I fell flat on my face. Alcoholics Anonymous was there to hold my hand. There were women every single time to look me in the eyes, as broken as I was each time, which was worse every single time, right? And they looked at me and they said, I love you. And they said that there was hope, and they told me to keep coming back. They told me to stay. And I just hung on until that finally clicked, She was honest with me, and I'm being honest with you when I say there's a home for you here, right? We don't have the ability to be honest with ourselves, and that doesn't make you broken. It makes you an alcoholic who just needs some help figuring out some tools to navigate a different way of life. An inventory is not a shaming process. It's actually freedom to life. We understand the roots of why we've made the decisions that we do. And when we go long enough without taking substance into our system, our brain is clear enough, right, for us to begin to even start with a spiritual experience. For me, that was eye-opening, right? If I could go 7 days without drugs and alcohol in my system, something was already happening. And that is God doing for me what I cannot do for myself, because everything inside of me, when I come back into these rooms, just wants to not feel who and what I am, right? But I did what they said, and I started taking suggestions, and I follow rules for my life today. God today, who he is to me and who he was in the evolution of the steps, it's like the book promised. You don't have to have that all figured out. You have to concede to the notion that, have you tried to take yourself out? Yep. Does something else bigger than you have you here? Yep. Cool. Let's start there. And now you take some suggestions. Now you put some work into those steps. You get free from the things that are holding you back. And who and what your higher power is, and who and what God is, will show up bigger than ever before. The book promises that it will be better than you could even imagine before you're even halfway through, right? You don't have to make it all the way. You don't have to, right, be perfect and all together. It says, come as you are, stay as you are, and let us help you as you are. I love that I'm introducing Robert tonight. He's been someone that's so influential in my journey, right? I've had people who've looked at me when I did not believe in myself and I did not love myself. And they're like, Michelle, you're meant to talk to women. And I'm like, no, I'm not, And again, God does for me what I can't do for myself. And he's placed mentors like Robert in my life who have lived a lifetime. I'm going to age you, like almost my lifetime in sobriety. That's like mind-blowing to me, you know what I mean? And I want that. And today I cling to people who have a foundation of exactly what this book talks about. They don't differ from it. When you meet people in the program who have long-term sobriety and a life of freedom, they all do the same things, one day at a time, right? And my life changed when I decided all that I can do is live in today. I'm tired of regretting everything I've done in the past. I cannot fix it and I cannot undo it. And I certainly have no business even thinking I can control what the future is, because I don't even know what I'm doing today. So if I just focus on today, right, and I wake up and I connect with something greater than me, like the book talks about, I follow rules like my friend has shown me, and I just stay in today, God does for me what I can't do for myself. And I'm clean and sober, and I'm living happy, joyous, and free. I get to be a mom today to 2 beautiful children that lights up my soul, right? And today I can be honest when I say I love them with everything in me. Most of my life that was a lie, right? I loved me more than I loved everyone else. And that ate at me that I said that, right? I had to have people like Robert show me how to be a better mom and be a better friend and live a different life. And so I know you're going to be super inspired by his story. I'm happy that you're here, and thanks.
Thank you. Well, we should all just go home, because I feel rather inadequate about now, because I've got to, and this is why Michelle and I, we have a lot of service positions together. We go into treatment centers, we chair and co-chair a meeting on Friday nights together, and it's really wonderful to be here. At first, I just invited her to introduce me because she's so eloquent. And then I thought I'd contact Billy. I said, can my friend, have 10 or 12 minutes? And he was so kind to do that. And congratulations. If you don't know, Billy will have 40 years sober September 21st or the 23rd. And my sobriety date is April 25th, 1986, and I'm a snob, and I'm not easily impressed. But when I found out a little bit more of his story, I wanted to be here just so I could hang around people who were sober longer than me. Men and women who were sober when I got here. And if you weren't here, where was I going to go? What was I going to do? I would just be alone. One more time. And you remember that. And Billy brings a flair, he's got that East Coast mentality. And most people, like, I got sober in Las Vegas, which is like learning how to swim in a shark tank. And it's pretty crazy. It's like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and you have unlimited rides, And so one of my rules of life is one person on the roller coaster at a time, because there needs to be that carny down there just saying, slow this sucker down, because it's getting crazy. By the grace of God that can see in the dark, and I don't really understand either of those things, tremendous sponsorship, the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the Big Book, meetings, and countless opportunities with newcomers. I haven't found it necessary to drink or take any mind-altering chemicals since April 25th, 1986. And for that, I owe AA my life. And it's exciting to be here. I want you to know I'm 70 years old, and I have sex almost every night of the week. All right. Almost Monday, almost Tuesday, almost Wednesday, almost Thursday, and it goes on like that. So I heard that the other day. I tried it out on a friend. I heard that from Dr. Wayne Dyer. I thought, can I deliver that? And so your laughter makes for usefulness. I'm sure it does. I'm gonna read you something, and it's really important. I love the Big Book. I'm like Billy. I'm like Michelle. Here's how important the 12 steps are. And if you're new, relatively new, welcome to AA. If you're in your last 30 days and you don't know it yet, welcome as well. I hope something changes for you along the way. It says AA's 12 steps. This is from the foreword of the 12 and 12, which was published in 1953. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in nature, which is practical as a way of life. Can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. And that says it all. Happily and usefully whole. When you come from a place like so many of us come from, we're partial. There's something that's missing and we know it. For some of us, we know it at an early age. We know something's wrong because we can go into a family or a group setting and there's just something different about us. We just don't feel a connection. And we think it's us. We don't know that it's just a psychological, it's a physical craving. Even early on, I wanted medication from pain because I was always in trouble. I was always doing something that would make others not happy with what I was doing, but I thought it was who I was. And so by the time I drank when I was 14 years old, the first time in the summer of 1960-something, it was a relief to me. You know, I tell people all the time that alcohol, when you add alcohol to a person who came from nothing, was a nothing, and was always going to be a nothing, and you can drink and become an almost, right. That's everything. That's everything. And I never thought I would be more than an almost, so I settled for that. And I spent the rest of my journey trying to recapture that feeling of being an almost. And that which I thought was medication, which would separate me, would give me the release from being a nothing, turned on me when I could no longer control how much I took, when I took, in what circumstances, and who I was taking around. My alcoholism progressed so badly that as a periodic drinker between 14 and 18 years old, in Japan they have a phrase that says that first a man takes a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man. I took a drink when I was 14. By the time I was 18 years old, the drink had taken me. And there was no turning back at that point. Every circumstance, every situation I was never in, that alcohol could not enhance it. That alcohol couldn't tell me, I know you're not as good as them. I know you're not as good in this situation. I know you're inadequate. But if you drink this, if you smoke that, if you snort this, if you drop that, you're going to be okay just right where you're at. And so my life became a series of experimentation. I was always trying to find that magic elixir, trying to find that combination of drugs and alcohol that would make my feel-good feel good. And this went on and on and on. It went through marriages. It went through dropping out of everywhere that I showed up to. There wasn't a situation that I didn't get tired of because eventually my drinking would be found out. And then I would have to leave. And I want to make sure I'm in the right room. So I'm going to read this to you. I want you to all take a test, right? I have every reason to believe you're going to pass. I hope some of you do. If not, you're a visitor or support. Here are some of the methods we have tried. I want you to raise your hand when this is true. Drinking beer only. Limiting the number of drinks. Never drinking alone. Pretty good so far? Keep your hand up if you answered yes to any of them. Never drinking in the morning. Drinking only at home. Never having it in the house. Never drinking during business hours. Drinking only at parties. Switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever with and without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums, accepting voluntary commitment to asylum. How many hands we got? Not bad. Not bad. For those of you who didn't raise your hand, we call that denial. And it's not a river in Egypt, although some of us think it is. It says outsiders are sometimes amazed that we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic situation. It says, but why shouldn't we laugh? For we have recovered and been given the power to help others. And if you're finding it difficult to laugh, to enjoy, to look back on things with a sense of merriment, I hope you stick around. Because, it says in the big book, we don't regret the past, nor do we wish to shut the door on it. And that's part of the promises on pages 83 and 84. But we get there through taking the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as Michelle so eloquently said, realizing how powerless we are is a very difficult thing. Bill in the 12 and 12 writes, who likes to admit complete humiliation? Practically no one. It just goes against our grain to give up. But if we don't surrender, we die. We die of a treatable condition. Think about that for a second. We can be treated, and being untreated means we die. So when we choose alcohol, we're choosing death. For many of us in this room, if you're non-alcoholic, I'm okay with that. You know, if you can turn around and drink like a gentleman, the big book says my hat is supposed to be off to you, and that's all good. But what if you can't? You know, what if you can't stop drinking? You know, the ego, which I have a very large ego, and that's why I do step 11 every day. God reminds me I'm not him. And which is kind of a clever argument we have every now and then. And so the ego, understand that the ego is telling you, maybe I'm really not. If you're hearing that voice, that's your ego. And understand your ego's 100% function in your life is to convince you it doesn't exist. Right? It would be like saying, Billy's not here. Michelle's not here. I'm looking right at them. But I'm telling myself they're not here. Which reminds me of a joke. So it's kind of funny. Segue. This is free of charge. There's no extra charge for this, Billy. So there's a Baptist, there's a Catholic, and there's a Christian scientist, and they all end up in hell. And the Baptist says, if I just listen to my pastor, I wouldn't be here. And the Catholic says, if I just listened to my priest, I wouldn't be here. And the Christian Science is over in the corner saying, I'm not here. I'm not here. It's kind of funny. And so if you're the Christian Science, if you're saying you're not here, what's wrong with being here? You know, I guarantee you, if you're in Wasatch Crest Recovery Center, you probably have a problem with alcohol and or drugs. And if you think you're a drug addict and alcoholism doesn't apply to you, stop doing drugs for a minute. Yeah. See how uncomfortable you get, and I guarantee you'll have a desire to stop drinking. Because drugs is a pathway to alcohol, and alcohol is a pathway to drugs, like it or not. If you don't believe that, then see me after the meeting. I have all the time to get through your denial. You know, when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I first came in February 9th of 1986. And I would hear voices. Some were real, some were imagined. To this day, I'm not sure which was which. But every morning when I'd get up, imagine everyone in your family that you've ever disappointed would be like a choir in your brain. And I'd look in the mirror and they were saying, Bobby, 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 what are you doing? Because by this time they were amazed. They were amazed that I would be willing to give up everything to drink. I'm the guy who walked down on two wonderful women. They were fabulous wives, one at a time. I'd have taken both, but I couldn't get that drunk. No, that's a joke to you ladies out there. Sorry about that. Or they couldn't get that drunk. Michelle's going to kill me. And I'm the guy who literally moved his children out of the way so I could go drink. I'll never forget them standing at the door saying, Daddy, don't go. And I moved them out of the way. Because by this time, I had no choice. I had to drink. It would be like asking a person not to breathe. Right. You would look at me and say, what are you, an idiot? And I may be. Why are you asking me not to breathe? If you know if I stop breathing, I will die. That's the way it is for many of us. So I'm standing in front of the mirror, and this choir is going off in my head, Bobby, 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 what are you doing? And on February 9th of 1986, there was nobody there. The voices had stopped. And I knew that if something didn't change, I was going to die. I'm 32 years old, and I'm looking at someone who's dead. Do you ever see that? Do you ever look in the mirror and find yourself so hopeless and helpless and out of control that no matter what you do, you're dead. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it scares us. It scared me so much, it scared me right into treatment. Unfortunately, I had lost all my money the previous night at Davy's Locker because I had to have these free drinks. And I'd gotten fired from the Las Vegas Hilton. And your insurance goes with you, so I had no insurance, no job, no money. And here I'm calling these treatment centers. What was really strange about that, though, back in the day, for those of you youngsters, there was this book called The Yellow Pages. Right? And it was a book, and the pages were yellow, appropriately named, and they were alphabetically. And so I looked under alcoholism. I'd have never admitted alcohol. I wasn't necessarily admitting it because I grew up in LA, downtown Los Angeles, 3rd and Hill, downtown LA. And I was 4 blocks from Skid Row. So I knew what alcoholics looked like. They pushed shopping carts that were primarily hopeless, and they drank cheap wine. I hadn't lost my home yet. I didn't own a shopping cart. And wine was secondary. I was a Scotch and beer guy. I was a Boilermaker. And so making that connection was my denial, but I knew that I needed help. I needed to go somewhere. And so after a series of phone calls, I found the Nevada Treatment Center that said, back in '86, $50 was a lot of money. Now it's half a bag of groceries at Smith's. And they said to me, if you can get here in 1 hour with $50, we'll talk to you. So I called my dad up and said, and my dad was sober like 7 years at the time, non-AA, just sober. And I said, Dad, if I can get down to Nevada Treatment Center with $50 in the next hour, they'll take me in. So my dad I'd never seen him move so quickly in all his life, and he got there and he took me to the Nevada Treatment Center, and that began my journey. I say it began my journey because my journey would be interrupted. There's this thing, it's called honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, the how we get sober, and that was a non-starter for me. I could be open-minded to a degree, selective open-mindedness. You figure that one out. I rationalized it. And I was willing to agree with you as long as it didn't interfere with what I wanted, where I wanted to go, and who I wanted to be. But honesty was very difficult. They talk about honesty at 3 o'clock in the morning, the lights are out, and you know what the truth is. I knew what the truth was, but I couldn't tell you the truth. Because I was convinced that if you knew who I was, where I'd gone, what I had done, as despicable as my life was, I would be the first person, this is true, I would be the first person in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous that you'd ask them to come back. And that was as true for me as I'm standing here right now. It was a fear, because I had nowhere to go. Where was I going to go if you told me not to come back? There was nowhere. By this time, brothers and sisters, if they knew it was me, they wouldn't even answer, let alone hang up. My mom and dad stopped talking to me. My wives, there was another story. I was unemployable. You know, the 226 Union in Las Vegas, it's a big town with a small network. No one would hire me because I would have to say, oh, I worked at Binion's, I worked at the Horseshoe, I worked at the Hilton. They'd say, yeah, tell us about that. And they'd call my room service captain or somebody, and they would tell the truth about me. And Robert's a great guy, great worker, but he has a tendency to not show up 3 or 4 days at a time and think that's okay. Or we find him passed out in the elevator shaft, you know, that sort of thing. And so being in AA was really important, but only important enough where you threatened who I was and me coming back. And at 71 days, alcohol won over honesty. I was at that jumping off place. I couldn't imagine my life with alcohol, and I couldn't imagine it without. And I was just stuck there in the middle. And I needed to be an almost. And I went back out and I began to drink. And I'm very fortunate. I was out 6 days. And a series of events happened that really revolutionized my recovery. I believe in recovery. I believe in the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe in the big book, the first 164 pages. I believe in the traditions. I believe we recover. I believe we get well. That's in the big book. Have a problem with that, I'll take you to the page and show you exactly where that's at. I am probably one of the biggest big book thumpers you will ever meet. I believe every word, everything in there. Just like I believe everything that my dermatologist tells me. I don't need a second opinion. Right? Do you? But somehow we need it there. And I needed another opinion. And that other opinion was to get honest or drink. I chose drinking. And I remember my dad found out I relapsed because I tried to go back to their house. And my dad dropped me off at a motel, the Red Butler Motel on 15th and Fremont, in a place called Heroin Heights in Las Vegas. Charming place, aptly named. And, yeah, beautiful place. If you know anything about Vegas, you know 15th and Fremont is a hellhole. My dad, he looked at me and he said, your mother and I aren't going to want you die. My dad. And he wouldn't even let my mom talk to me because my mom was very codependent, and my dad knew what I would say and how she would be weak. And so he dropped me off and he paid a week, and I could watch my dad. You know when someone's crying and you can't see them, you can just see their shoulders shudder? My dad was bigger than me. And for my dad to cry, it was a lot. And when he turned, I would find out later on, he thought it was the last time he was going to see me alive. And I went to this hotel, I went to this charming little saloon called the Sundowner. It's torn down now, and rightfully so. Yeah, been there, done that, yeah. Yeah, charming place, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And I remember getting my last drink at this bar. And it was really interesting because the bartender, it was a shift change, right? God just is so funny. Don't you just love God's sense of humor? Especially when it's used against you. So I'm at this bar and I ordered this scotch on the rocks with a beer back because that was my thing. That was my jam, right? There we go. I want to speak Michelle vernacular. And I ordered this drink, and there's a shift change, and a sober bartender that I knew from AA turned around and handed me my drink, and I'm grabbing the drink. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but I was a little hesitant. And he looked at me and he said, if you're lucky, there'll be tomorrow. And I drank that drink as quick as I could. I went to my hotel room where I had a lot of alcohol, and I had sat there that night and I tried to recapture being an almost. And I couldn't. And I realized then and there, I didn't want to die. I just didn't know how to live. But I had met some people in Alcoholics Anonymous that sounded just like me, who were happy and sober at the same time. And I got as drunk as I could because I figured it was my last go-around. And I went back to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. That was April 25th, 1986. And I've never looked back. Never. I've never doubted anything. I've doubted me on more than one occasion. I remember 6 months before I really got involved in the steps. I would do them because I'm really good with words, and I can repeat, I can recite, I can remember just because I need to sound like you, right? And so, but I needed to do more than that because I remember the honesty thing was a bar against my getting well. And I remember being 6 months sober, and I went to my sponsor, Jack, and I said, Jack, if I go back out, I will die. I was convinced of that, once again, as much as I'm standing here right now. And I said, Jack, what do I do? Because I'm never coming back. And Jack introduced me to the world of service. And Jack said, and Jack never lied, especially to me, Jack said, I've never known anyone actively involved in service who has gone out. And he said, learn how to clean an ashtray. Back in those days, you could smoke in Vegas, in the meeting rooms. Learn how to make coffee. And by the way, we have a 12-step call to go on tonight. I need you to go with me. And I immediately got into service. And that may have been a line to keep me around, but I've never known anyone in 38 plus years who is actively, that's the key word, actively involved in service, who's gone back out. Because my alcoholism was never about me. It was never about me. It was always about you. And I always felt a part of you. You know, I tell people all the time, I came from nothing, I was a nothing, and I was always going to be a nothing. Alcoholics Anonymous allowed me to be somebody, allowed me to be something. Zig Ziglar says you can be a wandering generality or you can be a meaningful specific. And today, I'm a meaningful specific. But the only reason I am that, the only reason I am recovered, and if you have a problem with that word, it's your problem, it's not mine. Because the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in the foreword to the first edition says we are 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show you precisely how we have recovered is why we wrote this book. So if you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and you don't believe that, you probably need to be a member somewhere else or come to believe that. And I don't mean to step on any toes, but I do, right? Because if you're not carrying that message, what are you doing? Are you just like me? Are you just buying time between drinks? Is this like an intermission between your relapses? What is this? Do you know most people who relapse never come back? We never see them again. What happened to so-and-so? Oh, I don't know. They moved or they went back out. And I've seen it. I've buried people who went back out, and I've buried people who were sober. And I'll tell you, burying the people who were sober was a lot more fun than burying the people who went back out. I've known people in Alcoholics Anonymous who have blown their brains out, who have killed themselves in sobriety because they knew they couldn't go back and drink, but something happened with their insanity. They stopped serving, they stopped doing whatever, and they entered this place of neutrality where it was no longer worth living. It was more painful to do the steps and to be honest, and it was more painful to drink. So the only third option is to take themselves out completely. How sad is that? How sad is it to lose someone with a treatable condition? It's one of the most sad things in the world, especially when we're right there with them, when we're suffering from the same condition, the same illness, the same debilitating desire to go and drink, or once we start to drink, we can't stop because of the phenomenon of craving. I really love what Billy read in the Doctor's Opinion. It's one of my most favorite passages in the big book, and it's where they took me to right away. They said, before you surrender, you need to know what you're surrendering to. It says we have a common solution. The only reason we have a common solution is because we have a common illness. If you're not sick like me, why are you gonna take step 2? If you're not powerless over alcohol, if your life had not become unmanageable, why would you do step 2? Why would you come to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity? Because you're holding on to that sanity one more time. What I have found is that if insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, then sanity must be doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result. And that's what I do today. And once I surrender to that degree, I know I'm nuts. Because I know I'm nuts because I want to drink after I've gotten sober. I want to drink after I've admitted I'm powerless over alcohol and that my life had become unmanageable. There's some mechanism that says, you know what? Maybe a scotch is pretty good. That's insane. You think about that for a moment. You've admitted you can't stop drinking once you start, and your life is an S-hole as because of it, and you think it's a good idea to go drink. That's insanity. And once I realized my insanity, and I realized that the chair would do a better job of managing my life than me, at least it's not run by an idiot, right? And it becomes easier for me to surrender. And I was talking to a guy at a treatment center over at Brighton, matter of fact, where Michelle and I go into. And he was having a problem with step 3. And I said, well, what does step 3 say? And he said, well, became willing to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood God. And I said, and he said, I. And I said, well, where's that in the step? I want you to read the step to me. What does it say? Well, become willing, we. I said, okay, do you know who the first 100 are? Because your idea of God is really twisted. Your idea of God got you here. Got you sick, got you, because that God is me. I'm the one who makes the determination. I'm the one that goes about making my feel good. I'm the one who says it'd be a good idea to take a drink or a drug or whatever, gambling or whatever. My first 12-step meeting was Gamblers Anonymous. And I want you to know that doesn't work if you don't take the steps either. And growing up in Las Vegas, it was, living there for 7 years, it was like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It was a rat race. You go into a casino, they promise you free food with these great buffets. You can get free drinks if you're willing to gamble, and scantily clad women are coming around all the time, and your drug dealer happens to hang out at the roulette wheel. I mean, I could hit all of those vices, and I never had to go anywhere, you know? It was like they were coming to me. That was magic. But that's the insanity to live with. And when you figure out you're insane, that sane people don't usually end up in 12-step programs because they're living somewhat of a normal life, or at least they're not burning their life to the ground every opportunity they get. It becomes almost comforting to know I'm not in charge anymore. You know when I'm uncomfortable? When I think I run the show. When I think I have a say in God's economy. When God says, get out of my way, and I said, no, I'm fine right here. And God says, okay, stay there. We'll see how this goes. You know? And once I do that, once I come to complete surrender, then my life no longer belongs to me. So taking a moral and fearless inventory becomes simpler than what we make it out to be. If I own my life, step 4 is a no-go. I can't be honest. I can't be fearless. But what happens if my life doesn't belong to me anymore? How easy would it be to get all that junk out of the way? And then God already knows. I already know because 3 o'clock in the morning, the lights are out and no one else is there. I know what the truth is about me. I just have to tell it to a person I love and trust and who's earned my trust. Then, if that wasn't enough, I have this thing called step 6. You know, where I was entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. And do you ever get tired? Like you got to pull over because if you drive anymore, you're going to get in an accident. Mm-hmm. I'm talking that kind of tired. I was entirely ready when I saw evidence of what I was afraid to share with someone else. Gosh, I was ready to have God remove these defects of character. I was praying, God, if you do anything for me, just get rid of these because I can't live this way sober. And then the shortcomings. I humbly, for one of the first times in my adult life, ego-driven maniac, and trust me, you don't want to see me without God. I'm not fun. I will use you to the degree that I can use you, and then I will leave you. That's who I am. But I have to humble myself before God as we understood God. And once I do that, I can go to individuals and say, you know what, you're on my list. And I need to apologize to you, steps 8 and 9. And man, there is freedom. If you think you're in bondage, it's because you haven't worked the steps. Because the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are designed to be freed from the bondage of self, where we're not alone anymore. Isn't it nice? We're not alone. I don't know you, and yet I know everything I need to know about you. You don't know me, but you know everything about me that you need to know because I said my name is Robert, I'm alcoholic. You know everything else. It's just maybe different colors, different dots connected, but we're all the same. We all suffer from a disease that once the mental obsession is not handled. See, the steps, and we get into steps 10, 11, and 12, and I want to be very conscious of the time. Steps 10, 11, 12, Joe and Charlie call them, and I'm sure you've heard it, they're growth steps. They're not maintenance steps. Because maintenance means you're staying in one position and you're holding back gravity. You're holding back that necessary. You're just standing there against the wind. Just hoping the wind doesn't blow you over. Right? That's maintaining. I'm just going to stand right here, or we're at a light. You know, I put my foot on the brake. I'm not going forward. I'm not going backward. I just have to wait for this light. But a growth step is really exciting because every day I grow. Every day. It says in the big book, we're not cured of alcoholism when what we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day I must take God's vision into all of my activities. That's a sentence that people usually forget because it involves me being second, God being first. Actually, I'm third. God is first, you're second. And if I'm in the equation at all, I get to be third at best. And so steps 8 and 9 are really important, and you don't want to miss these steps. because all of those steps 8 and 9 come, 8 especially, because it's where we write the persons we had harmed and we become willing. We haven't done it yet. We haven't done it in step. Oftentimes, and you hear it, Michelle or Billy, with people you sponsor, they're afraid of step 8. What are you afraid of? What in the hell are you afraid of? You're just writing. You're not talking to anybody yet. You're just making a list of all persons you had harmed, and you're became willing to make amends to them all. If you want to be afraid of step 9. That's where people say, you know what? I understand your forgiveness, but you're still blah, 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 blah. You're still this, you're still that. You might ask for my forgiveness. I might say it's okay, but I never want you in my life again. I've heard that more than once, and that's okay. It says, I made direct amends to such people. So my amends is done when I make the amends. I don't need Billy to say, hey, you're a great guy. Thank you so much for saying you're sorry.
Right.
He can say it or not say it. I would prefer him saying it. But it's not necessary that he says it. And so I work through the journey of the steps. And if you don't have a sponsor who understands these steps, get a sponsor. Because steps 1 through 3 are the surrender that get me ready for steps 4 through 9, which is the plan of recovery. So I surrender in 1, 2, and 3. I recover in steps 4 through 9, and I maintain that recovery in steps 10, 11, and 12. When you break the steps down that way, they become much simpler. And this is a simple program. I know. You find out, you've heard in the rooms that it's a complicated program, a simple program for complicated people. Throw that away. There's nothing complicated about us. You can see us coming from a mile away. It's a simple program for simple people who love to complicate things.
Right.
The program of Alcoholics was designed to be simple. It's so simple, guys like me can figure it out, because I'm not as smart as I will tell you I am. I need things to be simple. I need to be able to understand and to defend. I don't do anything I don't defend. I can't. Because at one point or another, I need to articulate why this is correct, why this is true, why I'm not just going down this trail that leads to nowhere, right? So I need evidence of a power greater than myself working and transforming my life. And I get that through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Understand that the first step is the only step that deals with the substance at all. If you're AA, NA, CA, CMA, HA, whatever A you are, the only step that talks about your substance addiction is step 1. So step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could make a case for 8 and 9, but I won't. Steps 10, 11, and 12. So 9 of the 12 steps are designed that I would have a relationship with a power greater than myself. What makes me think this was ever about alcohol or drugs? It's about God and me. It's about me coming into agreement with a power greater than myself that will restore me to sanity. Because it says in the big book, for by this time sanity will have been restored. I will react sanely and normally. And what's really cool, this has happened automatically. I didn't do anything. I've entered a position of neutrality. And if I'm tempted, I will recoil as if from a hot flame. Isn't that nice? Remember what temptation does to us. Temptation moves us in a direction we'd rather not move. But if I'm in a position of neutrality, I don't care. I can be around alcohol. I can be around anything. And for the newcomer, this all comes over time. Time is the one thing we can't give you. Michelle's got her time. Billy's got his time. George has got his time. I've got mine. You've all got your time. But you know what's more important than quantity? It's quality. If you don't believe me, read page 11 of As Bill Sees It. He says, he said, why not just try to be a member? He said, God is not asking you to be successful. He's only asking you to try to be, and that you surely are doing. And he calls it about relapsers. He calls it this slip business. Bill was very articulate. And he just had a miraculous way with words. He talked about this slip business. And he said, it is not always the quantity, but it's the quality that counts. So, regardless of where you're at, is where you're at. I don't expect you. I see some people who've got 3 or 4 years or whatever their time is. I'm thinking, holy crap, what have they been? eaten, you know? I mean, because they're much smarter than me. They understand this thing. I'm thinking, how did you get that? How did you get there? And I'm 38 years sober trying to learn from them, you know? And there's some people who are 30, you've seen them, I'm saying, whatever you do, don't tell anyone how long you're sober. They're going to think they can be like you and last this long, right? I mean, we all know people like that. I might be the only one who says it, but we all know people that way. Just shut up. Don't tell people, just keep quiet. You don't know anything about the steps. You're like the farmer, right? God, there's so many good stories in the big book. So the farmer is this guy, he's in the storm cellar with his wife. And a tornado passes through. And the tornado goes overhead, and he comes out of the storm cellar and he says, Ma, isn't it nice that the wind stopped blowing? She's looking at the devastation that this tornado produced. Prior to that, in the previous paragraph, which is really good, it says, we feel a man on thinking when he says sobriety is enough. And if all we are doing here is not drinking, we're going to drink again. I guarantee you. Because you're not going to be happy, joyous, and free. At some point in your recovery, your sobriety, it's not recovery, it's sobriety, something's going to happen. You're going to hear a song, someone's going to die, your cat, your brother, your sister, whatever. Someone's going to hit you the wrong way. Something like Michelle said, people, places, and things is just going to piss you off, and you're going to say, I'll show them, I'll kill me. And you're going to drive over to that drugstore and say, yeah, I got it. Yeah, F you, you know. And that's how we are, you know. And we're that way because we're not working with others. We're not working the 12 steps. We're not taking a daily inventory. We're not allowing our humanity to come fully exposed where we find out we have a need for God that we never thought we had. Like step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when you're wrong, promptly admit it. It doesn't say if you're wrong. It says when you're wrong. My sponsor always says, if we clear away the wreckage of our present, it doesn't become the wreckage of our past. Brilliant guy. And so then when I understand my humanity, I sought through prayer and meditation to improve. It's implying that I already have a relationship with God, because you can't improve on something you don't have, right? Understand what the words say. So improve my conscious contact with God as we, what God does, not who God is, as we understood God, praying only, an exclusive word that means there's nothing else, only, always, right? Only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. What is God's will? That I acknowledge Him in step 12, having had a spiritual awakening, as a result of what? As a result of the steps. It's implying I've taken the steps. What do I get to do then? At no point is this about me. I tried to carry this message to alcoholics. That's my mandate. That's thank you, God, for doing everything for me, what I could not do for myself. And then what do I get to do? Is it about me yet? No, it's not about me. I have to practice the principles in all my affairs. I hate that part. I want a 13th step because I wanted to say, Robert is a wonderful person and everything he does, everyone is happy with. You know, and 13th step is a different thing. But if there were a 13th step, that's what it would sound like to me. But it stops there. So what do I get to do? I need to practice the principles. And don't get it twisted. The principles are the steps. They're not going to introduce something at the end of the 12th step that we haven't already been introduced to. So practice the principles in all my affairs. All, inclusive word, all my affairs means there's nothing else, right? And that's what I get to do. Every day I get to wake up, and waking up is a privilege. What do you have on the table for me now, God? What can I do for your kids? How can I be a better version of me? Which is always possible. How can I be a better version of me to go help someone? And I don't even know who they are yet. How can I make a difference in the life of someone because you've made a difference in me? And understand, we try to carry this message. We're not always successful. Sometimes we have sponsees and people we try to influence, they go out. Their life gets sideways. We can't control that. But as long as we're honestly trying, we're committed to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And before I close, Billy, I'm going to read, which is maybe my favorite page of the big book. It's page 17. It is to me, it's the cornerstone of who we are and what we do and the magic that happens. It's the opening page of There's a Solution. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. We are average Americans. All sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are a people who normally would not mix. But there exists amongst us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We are like the passengers of a great liner when moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Unlike the feeling of the ship's passengers, however, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside as we go our own individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which now binds us. But that in itself would have not held us together as we are now joined. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and join, and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. My name is Robert. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Thank you.